Coming up next on Living on the Edge with Chip Ingram.
Even when a kid has a phone, for some of us, we think of it as a phone, and phones almost don't exist anymore. It is a mobile, international, informational device.
Welcome to Living on the Edge, and this is a special day. We're going to talk about parenting and technology. Now, here's what you need to understand. Technology is amazing. It's awesome, but it has produced new challenges like never before. I've asked my son to join me and help you learn what your kids would like to tell you 10 years after they grow up to help you parent well. You ready? Stay with me.
I had an experience a number of years ago as technology was developing, and we put a computer in our house, and I didn't know anything. In fact, I'm not even sure they had filters during those days, but I was ignorant. I was a conscientious parent. I cared very much for my children. I would never knowingly do anything that would harm them, and yet my lack of knowledge put a destructive barrier in one of my kids' lives that put him through incredible pain and things that he has to deal with to this day. And so I've asked Ryan to come and share a little bit of his story of how technology, when a parent doesn't know what he's doing, isn't up on what's happening, and doesn't provide safety, what occurs. So Ryan, why don't you share a little bit?
Yeah, grew up with a low-tech dad, but you always had people around you that were high-tech, and the area we lived in, Silicon Valley, was always high-tech, on the cutting edge. And so we got the internet very young in my early high school years there. And I just began to kind of discover, and it wasn't something, it just reinforced kind of natural, normal things as a young boy, beginning to discover girls and whatnot. But as I searched online, I found these images, and I was like, oh, that's interesting. I like them, and I began to look at them more and more. What began as just as a simple, just checking things out interest, turned for me personally into a full-fledged addiction, where I couldn't control myself. I felt helpless and out of control. In fact, I'd love to be when my parents were gone, so that I could go into the back room and just be online, whether it was late at night or whatnot. And it just started this cycle of habits. And for me, I was torn inside, because I loved God, and yet I couldn't change who I was. And one of the best and hardest conversations I ever had happened my senior year. I got caught, and I'm just so thankful, because the power's in the secret, especially with addictions, and especially in the area of pornography and sexual addictions, is the power is always in the secret, that you keep this. It's just your thing. And I believe Satan wants to hold that over you so that you don't get freedom. And I remember the computer was taken in for servicing by some guys at the church, and you had an interesting conversation with your tech guy.
Yeah, we were really committed to speaking the truth in love no matter what, and preach that and confront one another. And our tech guy, I think he probably spent like a couple days mustering up the courage and said, Chip, I really need to talk to you. And I said, well, what is it? He goes, well, do you have a problem that you need to deal with? And I was cleaning up your computer, and man, there's all these sites on it and pornography. And I said, whoa. I said, I have lots of problems, to be very honest, but that's just not one of them. And he said, well, someone in your house does. And Annie was like, 12 years old, so I didn't think it was her. And so that led to this conversation.
Yeah. I remember it clearly, because I came home from school and my dad was home. In high school, that wasn't a good thing. If he's home early, that means I'm in trouble. And so I saw his car, and I was thinking through my head, what have I done lately? And trying to figure out what I could make up to get out of it. But as I came to the door, my dad was there and said, son, we need to talk, and led me to the back room where we had the computer. And then I knew the gig was up, and I was thankful. as well, because finally something I'd been carrying for so long, something that I felt like it became an identity. This is who I am. I'll never change. I began to believe these lies. And now I began to have that glimmer of hope. And we had that conversation. I remember it was because it's awkward. My mom was there too. I was just like, oh boy, that's just weird. But we had that conversation. That began the journey of getting healing. And you know, this is an area I still experience the scars today. I have tons of guardrails and blocks in my life because I love my Jesus, I love my family too much to ever go down that road again. My wife has all our passcodes for everything because I go, I don't want to have that in our family, in our life. I don't want my kids to experience what I experienced.
Well, the interesting thing, just to give you a balance, this is also the same son that before he went to school, I would watch him get up and spend time with God and read his Bible. He led worship at our high school group. I remember hearing a Bible study in the front room where he led 4 of the 6 guys on the volleyball team to Christ. And so you need to understand is that, you know, as a parent, you can think things certainly look like they're going okay, and your son or your daughter can have a secret that you don't know about that is killing them inside. And in this particular case, it was because I didn't know some things about technology, and I didn't know what was there, and I didn't know how to filter it out. And it's been a painful journey. It's been exciting to see how God has redeemed it. But since that time, you've had an interesting journey. God has done a lot, and you've been a pastor for about the last 10 years of junior high, high school, college age, young adults. And recently you decided to get some information, especially from like your college age people. And we wanted to ask and answer the question for you. We were thinking about, actually I came up with, I need to speak on parenting and technology. And then as I prayed about it, you know, the Lord said, you don't know anything about technology. So this is not going to be a very good message. And so literally, so I said, Ryan, would you help me? And you know, it went from, Ryan, would you help me, to as we did it, Ryan, could I do this with you? Because you've been doing this with youth. And so you did a little survey, and we wanted to ask the question, what do kids wish their parents knew about parenting and technology? And this isn't so much what, you know, your maybe 14-year-old would say,
right.
But why don't you tell them what you did? This is very interesting.
Yeah, I just sent this question out to the group that I lead in San Jose and on Facebook and asked that question. And what I found was really interesting to me because it's counterintuitive to what we think they would say. And I wanted to get the age group because I've worked with high school students. I know what they would say, but I wanted to get the group like me that's looking back and have experienced the pain, the hardship, the regrets, some of the destructive stuff that has come into their life, and to be able to say, man, I wish my parents knew this. And here's what they said. The first thing said, I wish they knew how much I actually needed them. Wow. It's funny because so often in high school years you think they don't need you at all. In fact, they tell you often that they don't need you. And yet later they're looking back on, I wish they knew how much I actually needed them. I wish they knew that when they set boundaries, it makes me feel loved. It reinforces what you've been saying. I've worked with high schoolers, college age, for a while, and everyone that had no boundaries in the home, they would say this is the common theme: I felt alone and I felt abandoned. Wow. And it's interesting. We think sometimes giving them love without limits is helping, and really it produces this insecurity, this sense of abandonment that they have. I wish I had an open and honest communication with my dad or mom. You almost think, really?
Yeah, because I remember when I wanted open, honest communication with some of my kids in their teen years, I would say, in the car, well, how you doing?
Good.
How's things at school?
Fine.
Okay, that honest communication is really ripping, you know.
But here's the difference, is creating those meaningful moments. We had lots of great conversation over the years, whether it was during hard times and discipline or playing basketball. One of my sweet memories is playing basketball with my dad in the front, playing one-on-one, and after we get done, we just sat on the ground and just looked up at the stars and had this great conversation. I'm in high school. And it's just marked me to this moment. And your kids want those meaningful moments with you. Right. I wish they knew it's not the same as it was when they were kids. We understand this, but have that tendency of treating them just the same, and they say, we feel alone. The world's changed. I wish they didn't just ignore my use of the internet. I wish I didn't have unlimited, unmonitored access to the internet. That desire for help, bring boundaries. Don't leave me alone in this world where I can't navigate this on my own.
And so often, I think, Ryan, it's a paradigm shift for us, because even when a kid has a phone, for some of us, we think of it as a phone, and phones almost don't exist anymore. It is a mobile, international, informational device that, I mean, you can put even a filter on your phone, but if you get YouTube, if you don't have a separate filter, they can get anything. What goes on Facebook? I mean, they long for things to be monitored. They really want to know that someone's looking over their shoulder, don't they?
Yeah.
Wow.
Well, and the last one, you just don't expect. I wish I had real time as a family with no technology. Saying, I wish we unplugged as a family. I wish we played board games. I wish we just talked. I wish we had family time when there wasn't someone just looking down like this.
Wow. Well, we want to shift gears, and we want to be very, very practical. You obviously want to be, inspired and motivated to be a parent who understands technology. But my experience is most of us don't know how. And we're going to literally roll up our sleeves. If you don't have a pen out, get a pen out. And we're going to talk through what a parent needs to know about technology, and then we're going to move from that to a very specific game plan. You're going to walk out of here knowing, okay, this is where we're at, this is what I've got to do, here's why. And in fact, you've seen on your notes, there's a number of tools. We'll give you the specific places to go, where to get the filters, what the technical stuff happens, because what you don't know can kill your kid. And here's one dad who was ignorant that put my son through a very painful time that he still lives with, because I didn't know enough to set up guidelines, guardrails, and filters to keep him from what any young boy and stuff, those pop-ups would do. So, Ryan, you ready? Let's go.
Let's do it.
Okay, buddy, here we go. What do parents need to know in today's tech world in order to be the kind of mom and dad that their kids long for, we heard, and God wants them to be?
Yeah, the first one we see, we know, but I believe we need to begin to embrace and really accept this as a way of life, that the landscape is constantly changing. We get this, we see it, but so oftentimes we go into autopilot on life and realize we can't be autopilot parents. We have to be active parents. The landscape is constantly changing. So much so that a major, electronics store, their commercial and whole advertising campaign is around this. A buyback program, because the minute you buy it, it's obsolete, it's old. And so they're, marketing saying, hey, once you buy it and you realize the new best thing is out there, we'll buy it back from you. The landscape is constantly changing. I threw down a few things that were just fun for me to think through the years of what's changed, of dial-up to LAN, Ethernet, now wireless Bluetooth. You got car phones where, is briefcase size, to mobile phones, now smartphone. It's a whole different device, like you're saying. Tape, I believe you remember an earlier one, I don't.
Vinyl, it was called records.
8-track.
8 tracks, right.
There you go. CD, MP3 player, and then if you just think about the MP3 player and the iPod, and if you look at the first generation iPod, and if you hand that to a student, they'll just think, or one of your kids, that is the most archaic thing in the world. Well, that was created in 2001. And that was revolutionary, 1,000 songs in your pocket, and that was mind-blowing. And then now you just see the process there. But the landscape's constantly changing, and as a result, here's where the disconnect, I think, happens for many of us, is we see the landscapes constantly changing, but then we don't realize the rules are ever changing as well. How we interact as a society has changed. How we interpret life and do relationships has changed. Just think about some of the things that were impossible 10 years ago. I just wrote down a couple here. You can overthrow a corrupt regime with a tweet. I remember sitting in a conference where Jack Dorsey, the founder of Twitter, was talking, and he was boastfully talking about how in Egypt, his tool, that's what he calls Twitter, is just a tool in the hands of people that you can use it however you want, was able to be the catalyst to overthrow a regime. That would have never happened 10 years ago. Anyone at any time can be famous with a click. It used to be you actually had to have some sort of skill to be famous.
Or accomplish something.
Yeah. But now you can upload to YouTube and be famous. And, you know, a little boy uploaded his drumming skill, and now we know Bieber fever. Obviously you don't, but... but if you have young kids, they will. And I'll do the last one here, because this is a rule that's changed, that's really influenced how we engage one another, not just technology. Old is obsolete. New is not just nice, it's necessary. It's produced almost at hyperspeed, this consumeristic mindset. I have to have the new best thing. I'm just looking at my phone, and I have this phone, and my mom just got a new phone, and her phone's better than mine. And now...
Don't take it too hard.
I'm like, how do you have a mom that has a better phone than you? It's just not right. But we begin to buy into this mindset, right? New's not just nice, it's necessary. I have to have it. I have to stay up to date. But the flip side, old is obsolete. And what has happened with many generations, and we've seen this actually over the course of the last 10, 15 years, is because they are tech savvy and the older generation aren't as tech savvy, then you go, old's obsolete. I don't necessarily need you. I can get it all right here. The sages have been lost from our society. The wisdom of previous generations is beginning to vanish. And we have just this tech-driven society. Here's the encouraging part on that, because I work with college-age young adults. Over and over, their desire is to have mentoring. Is they are coming around and realizing we can do a lot of things, but we don't know how to balance a budget. We don't know how to do relationships. We don't know how. And they're looking for the next generation's wisdom to begin to speak back into their life.
Yeah, it's been an interesting journey. Teresa and I lived in Atlanta for about 7 years, and in the latter part of our time, our daughter was involved in a ministry in a church that just had all these single people. And she noticed that they were very zealous, but didn't know some basic things, and she's a leader. There's just no around Annie. Wherever she goes, she sort of plays this little pipe and people follow her. And she doesn't smoke it, she just plays it, you know. And so, you know, and her mom, as you have learned, is a soft touch. And so she goes, Mom, could I invite like 12 or 15 of my closest friends over and you cook dinner for them? And Dad, you don't do very much, so would you teach the Bible study? And so it was a window of time. We said, well, yeah. And we found ourselves, we went through a whole year with these 20-something people. And of course, you know, I didn't realize how tech dead I was, but I mean, all these kids are coming in with their iPhones and Googling this and doing that. And pretty soon, I mean, we ate around a table like a family. And they had a home-cooked meal, which I'm sure was the biggest attraction. And then we built relationships. And then pretty soon the girls are staying over and talking to Teresa, and we're counseling some couples about whether they should get married or maybe they shouldn't. And it was just an amazing journey, Ryan. To this day now, for the last couple years, Monday nights or Sunday nights, we've just been opening our home, and it's been one of the greatest times of ministry we've ever had. But they're thirsty.
Yeah.
And they know a lot about this. but they don't know how to walk with God, and they don't know how to do relationships.
Right.
So this is critical.
I'm reminded of a verse in 1 Chronicles 12. David's talking about his mighty men, and then he goes through a list. He's organizing. He just got the kingdom, and he's organizing his warriors, and he's telling their special skills and where they're great at. And he comes down to the men of Issachar, and he talks about the men of Issachar, and certain one had great battle skill, and with the men of Issachar, here's what he says. He says, the men of Issachar understood the times and knew what Israel should do. See, the landscape's constantly changing, and the rules are ever changing. Our role as a parent is become like the men of Issachar, where we begin to take a step back and try to understand the times, what's going on, and ask God, give us the wisdom to know what we should do as a result. Moving on from that, the rules are ever changing, and because of that, the dangers are changing and growing. When I was a kid, I think in teen, the biggest thing you could get involved with was pornography. Now it's just way, way more. It's changed and evolved and grown. I mean, you have your basic ones on there, your viruses, identity theft, hackers. You have the unsmart texting and driving. I don't want to ask how many of us have done that. Then you have addictions, and those have grown from pornography to, we have social addictions now of kids online, and gaming and online gaming addictions, and access anytime, anywhere. But the last three are ones I want to highlight because I think they're important now, and they're new within the last 5 years. One is online predators. And we understand that with technology and internet that we have access to the world, but now the world has access to us, especially in the social world that has come about with MySpace, Facebook, Zanga, all the ones that are coming out. And in the same way, I would never let my 6-year-old daughter and leave her in a major downtown area alone. But we do that all the time online, don't we? And all the same access, and actually a lot of the same problems are right there. And so we see online predators, and many students who are approached online or have been solicited. That's not a word, but we'll go with it. Solicited. There you go.
I've done it before. Don't worry about it.
They never tell their parents.
Yeah.
High number. Just never, ever share with their parents. So they have this conversation. In fact, I had a friend who was telling me about their nephew, that just because they had he happened to leave his email out, that they noticed that he was engaging on an online relationship with someone he didn't even know. This is a 13-year-old boy. And it was just by chance that they happened to see this and catch that there. So you have online predators. You got cyberbullying. This whole reality that the playground recess has moved. It's no longer at school anymore, but it's shifted 24/7 all the time. That you are in this social reality. And yeah, some of you would hate that, and some kids love that. But cyberbullying's real. And in fact, when you're sitting behind a screen, you say things, and especially teenagers and tweens say things much more harshly than you would ever say. If we have that tendency, how much more some of our kids that haven't been able to filter yet. And yet the result has been we've seen kids who have actually committed suicide of intense bullying there. And then the last one, sexting and sextortion.
Those are, I never even heard of either one of those. What are those?
Sexting is any time you send an illicit image of yourself or message. So we've seen this actually with professional football players, politicians. But this has become a thing that, as I was talking with especially campus directors, that they experience this on their campus multiple times a year. And on one Christian school told me, yeah, we have this happen once a year. Every year. Because sexting is when, a girl wants a boy's attention, and now the way to get your attention is take a picture of you nude and send it to the boy. Or you're really in love, so I want to do something special, and so I'm going to do that or engage in there. And what has happened, they break up, and then the boy sends it to everyone at school. And so now this gal has her picture blasted everywhere. But then sextortion is this reality of where predators are then taking advantage of that. And they pose as someone else to get access and say, hey, send me this, and develop this relationship. The minute they send it to them, then they say, hey, guess what? I'm not who you thought you were. I was. And now, if you don't send me more images, I'm going to send it to everyone else, post it online. In fact, they'll use parents as leverage and say, I'm going to send it to your parents if you don't meet me here or do this. And so the dangers are changing and growing constantly.
Yeah, as a parent, you just need to realize, no matter how sweet your son or daughter appears, there many times have an entirely different world going on that you don't even know about. And it's a world that speeds, and they don't get it. They don't project into the future. An image of them or something they say goes online, it's on there forever. Well, I mean, it's 20 years later when they're looking for a job interview or something happens here, or as we find now with some people, or maybe in a situation, and all of a sudden, oh, they're disqualified now because this image that popped up from 5 years ago. We as parents have got to enter into an educational relationship with our kids like never before.